Halifax has a peninsula. I happen to live and work there, and it's part of the city with the highest concentration of bike infrastructure. So it's not surprising that many of my videos showcase routes exclusively on the peninsula. But as many will remind you, Halifax is more than just the peninsula. There are some useful commuter paths for those traveling by bike in mainland Halifax. They tend to take the form of painted bike lanes rather than protected lanes or multi-use paths, but they generally run for very long distances alongside major arteries. In today's video, I'll be heading from my place on Quinpool all the way to Birch and Anchor on Birch Cove. I'll be taking a low-stress route rather than the more direct but high-traffic path along the Bedford Highway. The total distance of the trip will be about 11.5 kilometers, and I'll be making the trip during rush hour. As always, I'll be playing a game of +1, -2 along the way. Every time I encounter a piece of bike infrastructure that makes my trip safer or more convenient, I'll add a point. Every time I encounter something that makes my trip less safe or less convenient, I'll take off 2 points. You can keep track of how I think the ride is going by looking at the heads-up display in the bottom right corner. I've covered it in a previous video, but this is the Allen Oak Local Street Bikeway. It shadows Quinpool and it's pretty useful for getting around with minimal traffic interaction. These speed bumps slow down traffic on the street. The mode filter at this intersection minimizes the amount of throughfare traffic I have to deal with on this street. It's not usually an issue, but there's actually a veto button I have off to the right where I can cause the lights to change and allow me and anyone else behind me on the street to cross and cancel out traffic. As always, Allen Oak is really pleasant to bike through. Way too many stop signs though. There's no bike button at this intersection, so during rush hour it's mostly impossible to pass. I give up, I'm just using the crosswalk as a cheat. This ramp makes it really easy to get onto the Bears Road multi-use path. These cross rides remain great. The multi-use path is really smooth and easy to roll over. It's great to use for commuting purposes. Unfortunately, the path ends abruptly and it's on foot for here to the West End suburbs. It'll be a couple more minutes. There are some new traffic calming measures like these speed bumps being placed in the West End suburbs. The paving in the West End suburbs still isn't very good, but the city has actually patched over the worst of it, and so I'm no longer deducting points for this section. I'm actually going to hop off my bike and sidewalk it for a little bit. This is for two reasons. The first is just pragmatic. I'm going to have to left turn to get on the Bears Road in this really heavy rush hour traffic, which is going to take forever. And then once I get through the Joe Howe intersection, I'm going to have to left turn once again to get to where I'm going, which will also take a really long time. So it might actually be faster just to go on the sidewalk. The second reason is really just the scale of the traffic here. With the construction going on in this area and this being rush hour, honestly, this is just a little bit too much traffic, going a little too fast for me to be comfortable riding through. So I'm taking points away here, not so much for the walking through the intersection or on the sidewalk, really more for the concept of just only having poor choices if you're commuting through this area on bike. I can either sit through really heavy traffic and be surrounded by cars that are not really paying attention to what they're doing and have a really stressful way through this area, or I can hop off and obnoxiously walk on the sidewalk and cross at the crosswalk. And the same concept applies immediately after the intersection, where I can either go through really heavy traffic with people probably running me off the road a half dozen times on my way through the area, or I can go on a local street that has an extremely steep hill. So as a cyclist going through this area, you kind of face the forced choice of having a stressful trip or an obnoxious trip. You don't really have a good option. And that's why I'm taking a couple points off here. This isn't a local street bikeway, but there is some traffic calming infrastructure in place in Fairview. I went further up the hill than I really needed to, and now I need to double back. This will happen several more times. This is Dunbrack Street. It has a painted bike lane, which is going to run for basically the entire remainder of my northbound trip for this route. The great feature of the Dunbrack painted bike lanes is that they run straight through the intersections, so I never lose coverage and I'm never expected to share the road with traffic around me, which is great because the speed and volume of traffic of motor vehicles on Dunbrack would be extremely dangerous to be around. Less great in terms of design is the slip lane, which means that cars have to merge right through the bike lane in order to take the right on the next intersection. This means that they can kind of casually move through the bike lane, and often motorists are not very good at checking their mirrors when they're doing so, which puts them in conflict with any bikes that happen to be there. Bonus point for how long the Dunbrack bike lane has run for consistently, which lets me cover a really large amount of territory without kind of constantly taking turns or navigating my way through complicated local streets. Painted bike lanes aren't ideal because cars can and will park in them or turn through them or drive too close to them and kind of have like things like mirrors hanging into the bike lane, which is pretty dangerous. But the existence of this strip of paint on the road and kind of dedicating space to people commuting by bike is the only reason I'm making this trip and the only reason I'm using Dunbrack to do it. Otherwise, the volume and speed of the traffic would just make this entire strip of road completely inaccessible to me. I will note, though, that there's easily enough space off to my right here for a multi-use path that could kind of serve this entire strip of road and the surrounding neighborhoods. Just checking my map. Oops, wrong turn again. Everyone knows that stop signs are a good place to pass people. I think I read that somewhere. Pure expediency on my part. The Bedford Highway is gridlocked all the way back to the peninsula, and if I try to left turn across traffic to get to my destination, I'll be here until the end of time.